The receipt slipped out of his jacket pocket like a whisper of betrayal. Cream-colored paper, elegant script, a boutique I'd never set foot in. Chanel No. 5, $150. The date was last Tuesday, the day Robert told me he was working late at the office. I stood there in our bedroom, the jacket in one hand, the receipt in the other, and felt the world tilt slightly on its axis. 35 years of marriage, and I'd never worn Chanel No. 5. Robert knew that. I was a Shalimar woman, had been since our honeymoon in Paris when he'd bought me my first bottle at a tiny perfumery near the Eiffel Tower. He'd said the scent reminded him of me, warm, classic, timeless. So who was wearing the Chanel? My name is Margaret Holloway. I'm 58 years old and I've spent the last 3 decades building the most successful antique shop in Charleston, South Carolina. Holloway Antiques isn't just a store, it's a landmark, a destination. Tourists come from all over the South to browse my collection of Victorian furniture, Depression glass, Civil War memorabilia, and rare Southern artifacts. I've been featured in Southern Living magazine twice, and the Charleston Tourism Board includes my shop on their official heritage trail. Robert and I built that business together, or so I thought. I'd handle the buying, the restoration, the customers, the creative vision. He'd manage the books, the legal paperwork, the contracts, the business side, as he called it. We were a team, partners in every sense of the word. At least that's what I believed until I found that receipt on a quiet Tuesday evening in October. I carefully folded the paper and slipped it into my own pocket. My hands were trembling, but my mind was surprisingly clear. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't confront him. Instead, I hung his jacket back in the closet exactly where he'd left it, smoothed out the wrinkles with hands that had learned patience through years of restoring delicate antiques, and went downstairs to make dinner like I did every Tuesday evening. Robert came home an hour later, his tie loosened, his silver hair slightly mussed in that way that made him look distinguished rather than disheveled. He was still handsome at 62, I'd give him that. Tall, broad-shouldered, with those gray eyes that had made me fall in love with him back when I was 23 and foolish enough to believe that love conquered all. "Smells good," he said, kissing my cheek with the same casual affection he'd shown for years. I caught a whiff of something floral and expensive, something that definitely wasn't his usual sandalwood cologne. "What are we having?" "Pot roast," I replied, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. "Your favorite. With those roasted carrots and potatoes you love." He smiled, that same smile that had charmed me decades ago, and headed to the living room to watch the evening news. I stood at the stove, stirring gravy that didn't need stirring, and made a decision. I needed to know the truth, all of it, every sordid detail, and I needed proof before I did anything that couldn't be undone. That night, after Robert fell asleep, his snoring filling our bedroom with its familiar rhythm, I took his phone from the nightstand. My heart was pounding so hard I was afraid he'd hear it. I'd never snooped before, had never felt the need to. I'd trusted him completely, believed in him the way you believe the sun will rise. But trust, I was learning in the worst possible way, was a luxury I could no longer afford. His phone was locked, but I knew his passcode. It was our anniversary date, 0-6-1-5-1-9-8-8. June 15th, 1988. The day we'd stood in front of 200 people and promised to love each other until death did us part. I typed it in with shaking fingers, half hoping it wouldn't work, that he'd changed it to something I didn't know. But the phone unlocked with a soft click. I went through his text messages first, my thumb scrolling through conversations that seemed perfectly normal. Nothing unusual. Just conversations with his golf buddies about their handicaps and tee times, messages with our son Michael about the Clemson game, exchanges with clients about furniture appraisals. His email was clean too, almost too clean actually, like someone had gone through methodically and deleted anything incriminating, leaving only the bare bones of a normal life. But then I checked his photos. And there, buried in a folder labeled Work Files, a folder I would never have thought to open, I found them. Pictures of Robert with a woman. She was younger than me, maybe early 40s, with long auburn hair styled in soft waves, a wide smile that showed perfect white teeth, and the kind of effortless elegance that comes from having both money and time. They were at a restaurant I recognized immediately. The Peninsula Grill, one of the nicest, most expensive places in Charleston, where a dinner for two could easily cost $300. In one photo, she was laughing at something he'd said, her hand resting on his arm in a gesture that was far too intimate to be casual. In another, they were toasting with champagne glasses, the golden liquid catching the candlelight. My stomach turned. I scrolled through more photos, each one a knife to my heart. Robert and the mystery woman at the beach, her sundress blowing in the wind. Robert and the mystery woman in front of a beautiful house I'd never seen before, a modern waterfront property with floor-to-ceiling windows. Robert and the mystery woman kissing on what looked like a balcony at sunset, their bodies pressed together in a way that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. I zoomed in on the woman's face in one of the clearer photos and my blood turned to ice. The room seemed to spin around me. It was Linda Henderson, my best friend of 40 years. The woman who'd been my maid of honor at my wedding, who'd worn a pale pink dress and cried during my vows. The woman who'd held my hand in the hospital when I miscarried our second child at 12 weeks, who'd sat with me through the long, dark nights of grief. The woman I'd trusted with every secret, every fear, every dream I'd ever had. Linda. I must have made a sound, a gasp or a whimper because Robert stirred in his sleep, mumbling something incoherent. I quickly locked his phone and put it back on the nightstand with trembling hands, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my chest and expose my discovery. I went to the bathroom, closed the door as quietly as I could, and sat on the edge of the tub. The cold porcelain pressed against my legs through my thin nightgown. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to march back into that bedroom and beat Robert senseless with his own phone, to wake him up and demand answers, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain that was tearing through me. But I didn't do any of those things. Instead, I splashed cold water on my face, looked at myself in the mirror, at the woman with the graying hair and the lines around her eyes, the woman who just discovered her entire life was built on lies, and made a plan. If Robert and Linda thought they could betray me and get away with it, they were dead wrong. I'd built a business from nothing, from a small inheritance and a dream. I'd survived the death of a child, my mother's brutal battle with Alzheimer's, 2 recessions that had nearly bankrupted the shop, and countless other hardships that would have broken weaker people. I could survive this too, and I'd make damn sure they regretted every lie, every kiss, every moment they'd stolen from me. The next morning, I went to the shop early before the sun had fully risen. Robert was still sleeping when I left, sprawled across the bed like he didn't have a care in the world, like he wasn't destroying everything we'd built together. I resisted the urge to pour cold water on his face, to shake him awake and force him to confront what he'd done. Holloway Antiques was quiet at 7 a.m., peaceful in a way that usually soothed my soul. I loved these early hours when it was just me and the merchandise. The old grandfather clocks ticking their ancient rhythms, the vintage jewelry cases sparkling in the morning light, the ornate mirrors that had witnessed 100 years of history and now reflected my own broken heart. I made coffee in the back office, the familiar ritual providing a small measure of comfort. Then I pulled out my laptop and got to work. I needed information and I needed it fast. I searched for private investigators in Charleston and found a firm with excellent reviews and a professional-looking website, Coastal Investigations. I called them at 8:30 a.m. sharp. A woman answered on the second ring, her voice warm and professional. Coastal Investigations, this is Teresa speaking. How can I help you today? I need someone to follow my husband, I said, surprised at how steady my voice sounded, how businesslike I could be even as my world was falling apart. I think he's having an affair. I'm so sorry you're going through this, ma'am, Teresa said, and she actually sounded like she meant it. We can definitely help you. Can you come in for a consultation today? We have an opening at 11. I'll be there, I said. 2 hours later, I was sitting in a small but tastefully decorated office downtown across from a man named Marcus Webb. He was in his 50s, a former Charleston police detective with 20 years on the force, according to the diploma on his wall. He had kind brown eyes, graying hair, and a no-nonsense demeanor that immediately put me at ease. Tell me everything, he said, pulling out a leather notepad and an expensive-looking pen. Start from the beginning and don't leave anything out. Every detail matters, no matter how small. I showed him the receipt, my hands steadier now that I was taking action. I described the photos I'd found, told him about Linda and our 40-year friendship, explained about the business and Robert's role in it. Marcus listened without interrupting, taking detailed notes in neat handwriting. How long have you suspected something was wrong? He asked when I'd finished. Just since last night when I found the receipt, but now that I'm thinking about it clearly, there have been signs for months, maybe longer. Late night meetings that seemed to come up more and more frequently. Weekend golf trips with his buddies that he'd come back from looking guilty rather than relaxed. Times he'd come home smelling like perfume that wasn't mine, and when I'd ask about it, he'd say he'd hugged a client or a friend at some event. Marcus nodded, his expression sympathetic. That's very common, Mrs. Holloway. We see it all the time in this business. The spouse is often the last to know because they don't want to believe it. They make excuses, rationalize the suspicious behavior, trust when they should question. It's human nature. I need proof, I said firmly. Solid, undeniable, court-worthy proof. Photos, videos, documentation, everything you can get me. I want to know everywhere he goes, everyone he sees, every lie he tells. We can do that, Marcus assured me. But I need to ask, what's your end goal here? Are you planning to divorce him? Use this for leverage in a settlement? Just need to know for closure? Maybe all of the above, I said honestly. But first, I need to know the whole truth, because I have a feeling this affair with Linda is just the tip of the iceberg. There's something else going on. Marcus raised an eyebrow, his interest clearly piqued. What do you mean? What makes you think that? My husband handles all the business paperwork for my antique shop, all of it. The legal documents, the bank accounts, the property deeds, the contracts with suppliers. I focus on the creative side, the buying and selling and restoration. That's always been our arrangement. But if he's betraying me with my best friend, someone I would have trusted with my life, what else is he betraying me with? What else is he capable of? You think he's stealing from you? Marcus's voice was serious now, all business. I think I need to find out, and quickly. Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying me with an appraising look. Okay, Mrs. Holloway, here's what we're going to do. I'll put a tail on your husband starting this afternoon. We'll document everywhere he goes, everyone he meets with, everything he does. We'll get photos, videos, GPS tracking, the works. I'll also strongly recommend you hire a forensic accountant to go through your business finances with a fine-tooth comb. If there's any money missing, any irregularities in the books, any suspicious transfers, they'll find it. How long will this take? For the surveillance, give me 2 weeks. That should be enough time to establish patterns, document the affair thoroughly, and see if there's anything else going on. For the financial audit, that could take longer depending on how complex your books are. 2 weeks, I repeated, my mind already racing ahead. 2 weeks of pretending everything was normal. 2 weeks of lying next to a man who'd been lying to me. 2 weeks of smiling and cooking dinner and making small talk while my heart was breaking. I could do it. I had to do it. I wrote Marcus a check for the retainer, $5,000 from my personal account, the one Robert didn't have access to. Money well spent if it saved me from losing everything I'd built over 30 years. The next 2 weeks were the hardest of my life, harder than losing the baby. Harder than watching my mother forget who I was, harder than any of the countless challenges I'd faced in building the business. I had to pretend everything was normal. I had to smile at Robert over breakfast, our morning coffee routine unchanged. I had to kiss him goodbye when he left for work, knowing he might be going to meet Linda. I had to make small talk about our day over dinner, asking about his meetings and clients while knowing every word out of his mouth might be a lie. I had to lie next to him in bed at night, feeling his warmth, hearing his breathing, and wondering how many times he'd lain next to her the same way. And Linda, oh God, dealing with Linda was its own special torture. She called me 3 times that first week alone, wanting to have lunch at our usual spot, go shopping for Christmas gifts even though it was only October, catch up over coffee like we'd done 1,000 times before. Each time I made an excuse. I was too busy with inventory, I had a migraine, I had to help Michael with something. She sounded disappointed but understanding, completely oblivious to the fact that I knew her secret. Or maybe she wasn't oblivious. Maybe she was calling to gauge my suspicions to see if I knew. The thought made my skin crawl. Marcus sent me daily updates, usually in the evening after Robert was asleep. Photos of Robert and Linda meeting at various restaurants around Charleston, never the same place twice, always somewhere relatively discreet but nice enough for a special occasion. Videos of them going into a house in Mount Pleasant, a beautiful waterfront property with a private dock and what looked like 4 bedrooms at least. That's the house from the photos. I texted Marcus when he sent me the first video of them entering it together, her key turning in the lock like she owned the place. I ran the property records, Marcus texted back. It's owned by an LLC called R&L Properties. Ring any bells? R&L Robert and Linda. They'd bought a house together, a love nest. My stomach turned. On day 8 of the surveillance, Marcus sent me something that made my blood boil, that transformed my sadness into cold, hard rage. It was a photo of Robert and Linda entering a lawyer's office downtown, a place I recognized. Henderson and Associates, family law attorneys. I called Marcus immediately, not caring that it was 10 p.m. and Robert was in the next room watching television. Family law? I hissed into the phone, my voice low and furious. Are they planning to get married? Are they already working on divorcing me? Linda's husband died 5 years ago, remember? Marcus said gently. But yes, I think marriage might be part of their plan. However, I think there's more to it than that. Mrs. Holloway, I have a contact at the courthouse, someone who owes me a favor from my police days. I had him check the recent filings for anything involving your name or your business. And he found something very interesting. My heart started pounding. What did he find? Your husband filed paperwork 3 months ago to transfer the deed of your shop's building. The transfer is set to go through in 2 weeks. It's going to an LLC called, you guessed it, R&L Properties. The same LLC that owns the house in Mount Pleasant. R&L, I said slowly, each letter tasting like poison in my mouth. Robert and Linda. That's exactly what I'm thinking, Mrs. Holloway. I believe your husband and his mistress are planning to steal your business right out from under you. I sat down heavily in my office chair, my legs suddenly unable to support me. The room seemed to spin. How? It's my shop. I inherited the building from my parents when they died. My name is on everything. I've run that business for 30 years. How could he possibly steal it? That's what we need to figure out, Marcus said grimly. I'm strongly recommending you call that forensic accountant first thing tomorrow morning. And you definitely want to get your own lawyer involved in this. Fast. Because if that deed transfer goes through, getting the property back becomes exponentially harder. I hung up the phone and sat in the darkness of my office at the shop, surrounded by the antiques I'd lovingly collected over 3 decades. Each piece had a story. The Victorian settee I'd found at an estate sale in Savannah and spent 6 months restoring. The collection of Depression glass I'd assembled piece by painstaking piece. The Civil War letters I'd authenticated and preserved, now worth thousands. And Robert wanted to take it all. Not just my marriage, not just my best friend, but my life's work. Over my dead body. The next morning, I called Jonathan Pierce before I'd even had my coffee. Jonathan had been my family attorney for 20 years, had handled my parents' estate when they passed, had helped me with various business contracts and legal issues over the years. If anyone could help me now, it was him. Margaret, he said warmly when his secretary put me through, what a pleasant surprise. What can I do for you today? I need you to review every legal document related to my business, Jonathan. Every deed, every contract, every filing, everything with my signature on it. And I need you to do it quietly without Robert knowing. Can you do that? There was a pause, and I could almost hear his lawyer brain kicking into high gear. Margaret, is there a problem? Has something happened? That's what I'm trying to find out, I said carefully. I have reason to believe Robert might be doing something improper with the business paperwork. I need to know exactly what I own, what he has access to, and if there's anything that doesn't look right. I see, Jonathan said, his voice serious now. Yes, I can definitely do that. How quickly do you need this done? Yesterday would be good, tomorrow at the latest. That fast? Okay, this is serious. I'll clear my afternoon and get started immediately. Can you come to my office and sign some authorization forms? I'll be there in an hour. True to his word, Jonathan worked fast. By Friday, just 3 days later, he called me with news that made me physically ill. I had to sit down on the floor of my shop's back office, my back against the wall, just to stay upright while he talked. Margaret, I need you to sit down, he said, his voice grave. You're not going to like what I'm about to tell you. Just tell me, Jonathan, I can take it. But I wasn't sure I could. 7 months ago, Robert filed paperwork that added him as a co-owner of the building where your shop is located. The building you inherited from your parents. The paperwork has your signature on it, notarized and everything. That's impossible, I said flatly. I never signed anything like that. I would remember signing away half my building. That building is worth at least $2 million, Jonathan. I would never. I thought you might say that, Jonathan interrupted. So I took the liberty of having a handwriting expert look at the signature. Margaret, it's forged. Someone, almost certainly Robert, copied your signature. It's a very good forgery, good enough to fool a notary who wasn't paying close attention, but it's definitely not your real signature. There are small tells, microscopic differences that only an expert would catch. I closed my eyes, feeling tears burn behind my eyelids. Robert forged my signature. Yes, but Margaret, there's more. And it gets worse. How could it possibly get worse? He's also been moving money out of the shop's business account. Small amounts at first, $500 here, $1,000 there, amounts that wouldn't raise immediate red flags. But in the last 3 months, he's transferred over $80,000 to that LLC account, R&L Properties. That's your money, Margaret. Money from your sales, your hard work. $80,000, I repeated numbly, the number not quite registering. That's my entire profit margin for the last quarter. That's money I was planning to use to expand the business, to open a second location. Yes. And based on all the documents I've reviewed and based on the pattern of behavior here, I believe Robert and Linda Henderson are planning to claim legal ownership of your building, kick you out of your own shop, and open their own antique business in your place. They're not just having an affair, Margaret. They're systematically stealing your entire operation, piece by piece. Your building, your money, your reputation, your customer base, all of it. The rage that swept through me was unlike anything I'd ever felt in my 58 years of life. It was white-hot and ice-cold at the same time, a fury so intense it made me shake. Can we stop them? Please tell me we can stop them. Yes, we can, Jonathan said firmly. But we need to act fast and we need to act smart. The deed transfer is scheduled to be finalized in exactly 2 weeks. Once that happens, once Robert's name is on that deed as co-owner, it becomes much, much harder to reverse, even with proof of forgery. We'd be looking at years of litigation. So what do I do? Tell me what to do and I'll do it. First, today, right now, transfer all remaining business assets to a new account that Robert doesn't have access to. Every penny. Don't leave him a dime to steal. Second, I'm going to file an emergency injunction this afternoon to stop the deed transfer. Third, gather every single piece of evidence you have, the photos, the surveillance reports, the financial records, everything. I mean everything, Margaret, we're going to need it all. I thanked Jonathan and hung up, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. Then I immediately called Marcus Webb. I need everything you have, I said without preamble. Every photo, every video, every scrap of evidence, every detail, and I need it now today within the hour if possible. I'll have it to you by tonight, Marcus promised. Mrs. Holloway, I take it the lawyer found something? Oh, he found something all right. Robert's been embezzling from me, and he forged my signature to steal my building. They're planning to take everything. Jesus, Marcus breathed. Okay. Tonight you'll have everything. Every photo, every video, complete GPS tracking logs, everything. And Margaret? Yes, make them pay for all of it. Oh, I will, I said, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. I absolutely will. That evening, I went to Linda's house unannounced. It was time to confront her face to face, to look her in the eye and let her know I knew everything. She lived alone in a beautiful colonial in the historic district, a house her late husband had bought for her 30 years ago, leaving her well off but lonely when he died of a heart attack 5 years ago. Or so I'd thought. Apparently, she hadn't been lonely at all. She'd had my husband to keep her company. She opened the door with a bright, completely fake smile, the same smile she'd been giving me for who knows how long. Margaret. What a wonderful surprise. I was just thinking about you. Come in, come in. I stepped inside, my purse heavy with the folder Marcus had delivered to my shop an hour ago. A folder containing every damning piece of evidence we'd collected. We need to talk, Linda. Her smile faltered just slightly. Is everything okay? You sound serious. Come sit down, let me get you some tea. No tea, I said flatly, no sitting down. No pretending everything's fine. I pulled out the folder and handed it to her, watching her face as she realized what she was looking at. I know about you and Robert, I know everything. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. She opened the folder with trembling hands and saw the photos, her and Robert at restaurants, at the beach house, kissing on the balcony, entering the lawyer's office together. Margaret, this isn't. I can explain, don't. I cut her off, my voice cold as ice. Don't you dare try to explain this away. Don't you dare insult my intelligence by pretending this is anything other than what it is. 40 years, Linda. We've been friends for 40 years. I was there when you got married. I held your hand when your husband died. I trusted you with everything, my secrets, my fears, my marriage problems, everything. And you repaid me by sleeping with my husband behind my back and conspiring to steal my business right out from under me. It's not like that, she stammered weakly, but her eyes, her guilty, desperate eyes, told me she knew I had her dead to rights. Margaret, please, you have to understand. Then what is it like, Linda? Please enlighten me. Explain to me how you and Robert have been planning to forge my signature, transfer my building's deed to your little LLC, and take over my shop. Explain to me how you've been helping him embezzle over $80,000 from my business. Explain to me how any of that is anything other than theft and betrayal. Linda sank onto her antique sofa, a piece I'd helped her find at an estate sale in Colombia 10 years ago, and the folder fell from her hands, photos spilling across her expensive Persian rug. How did you find out? She whispered. Does it matter? I shot back. I know everything. The affair, the embezzlement, the forged documents, the house in Mount Pleasant, the meetings with lawyers, all of it. There's not a single detail of your little scheme that I don't know about. Margaret, please, she said, and now the tears were flowing down her face, mascara running in black rivulets. Please let me explain. Robert and we didn't mean for this to happen. We didn't plan it. We ran into each other at a charity event last year. We started talking, just casual conversation, and then we started having lunch occasionally, just as friends, and then you decided it would be fun to destroy my marriage and steal my life's work. Is that what you were going to say? No, God, no, that was all Robert's idea. The business thing, I mean, I told him it was wrong that we couldn't do that to you, but he said you'd built such a successful business, but you were getting older, slowing down, and you wouldn't be able to run it much longer anyway. He said we could take over, expand it, make it even better, bigger. He made it sound like we'd be doing you a favor, like we'd be helping you retire gracefully instead of working yourself to death. And I believed him. I wanted to believe him because I loved him. Because I love him. And you believed that stealing from me was somehow helping me? I asked incredulously. You actually convinced yourself that forging my signature and taking my building was an act of kindness. When you say it like that, it sounds horrible, Linda said, her voice breaking. But Robert made it sound so reasonable, so logical. He said your marriage was already over anyway, that you two were just going through the motions, that you hadn't been truly happy in years. He said you'd probably be relieved when he asked for a divorce, that you could take your half of the assets and retire, travel, do all the things you'd always wanted to do. I laughed, a bitter, harsh sound that didn't sound like it came from me. Our marriage was fine until you decided to seduce my husband, Linda. We were happy, not perfect, but happy. We had plans, dreams. We were going to travel when we retired, see Europe together, spend more time with Michael and the grandkids. And now you're both going to pay for destroying that. What are you going to do? She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes, finally looking genuinely afraid. I'm going to make sure everyone in Charleston knows exactly what kind of people you are. I'm going to get my business back, every penny of my money and full ownership of my building. I'm going to divorce Robert and take him for everything he's worth. And I'm going to watch you both lose everything, your reputations, your social standing, your friends, everything. By the time I'm done, you'll wish you'd never laid eyes on my husband. Margaret, please, she begged, actually getting on her knees in front of me. Please don't do this. I'll end it with Robert right now. I'll sign over the house, return the money, anything you want. Just please don't make this public. Think about what this will do to Michael, to your son. Think about how humiliating this will be for everyone. You should have thought about my son before you started sleeping with his father, I said coldly. You should have thought about humiliation before you conspired to steal from me, and you should have thought about the consequences before you betrayed 40 years of friendship. I left her house without looking back, her sobs echoing behind me, and I felt absolutely nothing. No pity, no regret, no sadness, just cold, hard satisfaction that she finally understood what she'd done, even if it was too late. The next morning, I called my son Michael. He lived in Atlanta with his wife Sarah and their 2 kids, my beautiful grandchildren Emma and Jake, but he needed to know what his father had done. Mom, he answered on the second ring, his voice concerned. I rarely called him in the middle of a workday. Is everything okay? Michael, honey, I need you to sit down. What I'm about to tell you is going to be very hard to hear. I told him everything. The affair with Linda, the embezzlement, the forged documents, the plan to steal the shop. Michael listened in shocked silence. Dad did this, he finally said when I'd finished. Our dad? I'm so sorry, sweetheart, I said, my heart breaking for him. But yes, and Aunt Linda. Yes, there was a long pause. Mom, what are you going to do? I'm divorcing him, and I need you to know that whatever happens next, I'm going to protect our family and our business. What do you need me to do? Michael asked. Whatever you need, I'm there. When this is over, I'm going to need you to help me run the shop. Your father will no longer be involved. I'll talk to Sarah tonight, Michael said without hesitation. But I'm pretty sure she'll be on board. Mom, make him pay. That afternoon, I put the final phase of my plan into action, the revenge that would expose them both in the most humiliating way possible. I'd learned from Marcus that Robert and Linda had scheduled a romantic weekend getaway to Hilton Head. They'd booked a suite at the fanciest resort on the island for the coming weekend. They had no idea I'd stopped the deed transfer. They had no idea I knew everything, and they definitely had no idea what I had planned. The morning they were supposed to leave, I went to Linda's house. She wasn't home, probably off getting ready for her romantic weekend. I used the spare key she'd given me years ago for emergencies and let myself in. In her bathroom, I found what I was looking for, her bottle of Chanel No. 5. The $150 perfume Robert had bought her. The scent that had clung to his clothes and betrayed them both. I took the bottle to my car where I had supplies waiting, permanent black fabric dye, the industrial-strength kind. I carefully opened the perfume bottle and added the dye, mixing it thoroughly until it looked normal. The perfume would smell the same, that distinctive Chanel scent, but it would leave dark, permanent stains on anything it touched. I replaced the bottle exactly where I'd found it and left. But I wasn't done. I also knew Linda drove a white Mercedes, her pride and joy, a gift from her late husband. That car was immaculate, washed weekly, detailed monthly. She loved it more than anything. I went to her garage and found it gleaming under the overhead lights. I pulled out another bottle, pure Chanel No. 5 this time, mixed with even more black dye. And I poured it all over her door handles, the steering wheel, and the driver's seat. The dye would soak into everything, her clothes, her skin, the expensive white leather seats. It would take weeks, maybe months, to fully clean out if it ever came out at all. I stepped back and admired my work. Let them have their romantic weekend. They'd remember it all right. 3 days later, Marcus called me, laughing so hard he could barely speak. You're not going to believe this, he said. They cut their trip short. They came back this morning and it wasn't pretty. Tell me everything, I said, settling into my office chair with a cup of coffee. Linda's car is completely ruined. Black stains everywhere on the seats, the steering wheel, the dashboard. The whole interior looks like it went through a coal mine. And she's got black stains all over her hands and clothes. Apparently, she used that perfume you tampered with and then touched everything. Her white sundress looked tie-dyed. Her hands looked like she'd been working in a mechanic's shop. I smiled, feeling a grim satisfaction. And Robert? Oh, it gets better. He's got black stains on his clothes too, his expensive polo shirt, his khaki pants. Apparently they were fighting in the hotel lobby. My contact there said other guests were recording it on their phones. Linda was screaming about her ruined car and demanding to know if Robert had done something to it. Robert was yelling back that he had no idea what was wrong, that maybe someone vandalized it. They checked out early and drove home in a car that left black marks on everything they touched. Beautiful, I said, taking a sip of my coffee. Absolutely beautiful. There's more, Marcus added. The hotel staff had to deep clean their suite because there were black stains on the bedding, the bathroom towels, everywhere. The hotel is considering charging them for damages. And get this, Linda called a detailing service to clean her car and they quoted her $8,000. They said the dye has permanently bonded with the leather. She might have to replace the entire interior. Good, I said coldly. That's what she gets for wearing my husband's gifts. Marcus chuckled. Mrs. Holloway, I've been doing this job for 15 years and I've never seen revenge quite like this. It's subtle, it's devastating, and it's completely untraceable back to you. I learned patience from restoring antiques, I said. Sometimes the best results come from careful, methodical work. But the perfume incident was just the appetizer. The main course was still to come. 2 weeks later, I organized what I called a business appreciation dinner at the Peninsula Grill, the same restaurant where Robert had been wining and dining Linda. I invited everyone who mattered in Charleston's antique community: dealers, collectors, fellow shop owners, members of the Historical Society, and several prominent businesspeople who'd supported me over the years. I also invited Robert and Linda, sending them separate invitations that made it seem like a casual industry event, a celebration of Holloway Antiques' 35-year anniversary. They both accepted, probably thinking they could maintain their facade a little longer, that I was still the trusting fool they'd been playing for months. What they didn't know was that I'd arranged for something very special. The dinner was held in a private room with elegant chandeliers, crisp white tablecloths, and a large projection screen at one end that I'd had installed for the occasion. I'd told the restaurant it was for a slideshow presentation about the history of the shop. That part was true, just not in the way anyone expected. Robert arrived first, looking handsome in a dark suit, playing the role of the supportive husband. He kissed my cheek and whispered, "This is a great idea, Mags, celebrating the business like this." I smiled and said nothing. Linda arrived 20 minutes later wearing a high-necked black dress, probably to hide any remaining dye stains on her skin. She avoided looking at me directly, her eyes darting around the room nervously. After everyone had eaten their appetizers and the wine was flowing, I stood up at the head of the table. The room gradually fell silent, all eyes turning to me. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I said, my voice carrying across the room with a confidence I'd earned through years of dealing with customers and running a business. "I wanted to gather you all here to celebrate 35 years of Holloway Antiques. 35 years of hard work, dedication, and passion for preserving history." People nodded, murmuring agreement, raising their glasses. "But tonight isn't just about celebration," I continued. "It's also about truth. And there's something I need to share with all of you, something that affects not just me but the integrity of our entire community." I saw Robert shift uncomfortably in his seat, his smile faltering. Linda's face had gone pale, her hands gripping her napkin like a lifeline. "As many of you know, I've built this business from nothing. My parents left me the building, but everything else, the inventory, the reputation, the success, that was all earned through hard work and dedication. Through honesty and integrity." I clicked a button on the remote in my hand and the screen behind me lit up. The first photo appeared: Robert and Linda at a restaurant, holding hands across the table, candlelight illuminating their faces. Gasps echoed through the room. People turned to stare at Robert and Linda, then back at the screen, then at me. "My husband, Robert Holloway," I said, my voice steady and cold, "and my former best friend of 40 years, Linda Henderson, have been having an affair for over 18 months. More photos appeared, cycling through on the screen. Robert and Linda at the beach, at the house in Mount Pleasant, kissing on the balcony at sunset, entering the family law attorney's office together. But that's not all," I continued, clicking to the next slide. "During that time, Robert embezzled over $80,000 from Holloway Antiques, money from our sales, from your purchases, from the business we all helped build." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. I heard someone say, "Oh my God." Someone else whispered, "I can't believe this." The next slide showed bank statements with the transfers highlighted, the amounts circled in red. Then came copies of the forged signature on the deed transfer documents, side by side with my real signature, the differences marked by the handwriting expert. Robert also forged my signature on legal documents in an attempt to steal the building where Holloway Antiques is located. A building I inherited from my parents, a building worth over $2 million. He and Linda Henderson formed an LLC, R&L Properties, and were planning to transfer ownership of my building to that LLC, kick me out of my own shop, and open their own antique business in my place. "That's enough," Robert shouted, standing up abruptly. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Margaret, stop this right now, you're embarrassing yourself." "No, Robert," I said calmly, looking him directly in the eye. "I'm telling the truth. If that embarrasses you, that's your problem, not mine." Linda stood up too, tears already streaming down her face, her carefully applied makeup beginning to run. Margaret, please, you're humiliating us. Can't we discuss this in private? Discuss it in private? I repeated, my voice rising for the first time. The way you two discuss stealing my business in private, the way you privately forged my signature, the way you privately embezzled my money. I clicked to the final slide. A statement from Jonathan Pierce, my attorney, on official law firm letterhead, detailing the forgery, the embezzlement, and the attempted theft. Legal terms and dollar amounts that made everything undeniably real. I'm sharing this with all of you for several reasons, I said, addressing the room. First, because I want to make something absolutely clear. Holloway Antiques is my business, built on my work, and it will remain my business. Robert Holloway will have no further involvement in any capacity whatsoever. Second, because many of you have done business with Robert over the years, and you deserve to know that he cannot be trusted. And third, because I refuse to be ashamed of being betrayed. The shame belongs to the betrayers, not to me. The room was completely silent now, every person frozen in their seat. Some looked horrified, some looked sympathetic. Many looked angry at Robert and Linda for violating the trust of the community. And Linda Henderson, I continued, turning to look at her directly, will never be welcome in my shop, at any of my events, or anywhere I have influence. I hope everyone here will join me in making it clear that fraud and betrayal have no place in our community. Jonathan Pierce, who'd been sitting quietly near the door, stood up and cleared his throat. For those who are interested, Mrs. Holloway will be filing for divorce tomorrow morning. Criminal charges for embezzlement and forgery are being considered. An emergency injunction has already been filed and granted, preventing the fraudulent deed transfer. All of Mr. Holloway's access to business accounts has been revoked. This is not gossip or vindictiveness, these are documented legal facts. Robert's face had turned purple with rage and humiliation. You can't do this to me. That business is half mine, I helped build it. You kept books and signed papers, I said, my voice dripping with contempt. I did everything else. I found the inventory, I restored the pieces. I built relationships with customers, I created the reputation. You were a glorified accountant and apparently not even an honest one. I'll sue you for defamation, Robert shouted. I'll take you to court. Please do, I said calmly. I have 3 lawyers who would love to depose you under oath. I have a private investigator with weeks of surveillance footage. I have bank records, forged documents, and expert testimony. Please, Robert, take me to court. I dare you? He stood there, mouth opening and closing, unable to form a response. Linda tried one more time. Margaret, I know you're hurt. I know we did terrible things, but we loved each other. Doesn't that count for something? Can't you understand? Love. I cut her off, my voice like ice. You call what you did love, you don't betray someone you love, you don't steal from them, you don't conspire to destroy them. What you two had wasn't love. It was greed, selfishness, and mutual delusion. The dinner ended in chaos exactly as I'd planned. Some guests left immediately, uncomfortable with the confrontation. Others stayed, coming up to me to offer support, to tell me how brave I was, to ask how they could help. Robert and Linda fled quickly, their heads down, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. But I stayed. I thanked every person who spoke to me. I accepted hugs and words of encouragement. I made sure everyone saw that I was not broken, not defeated, not ashamed. I was angry, I was betrayed, but I was not beaten. Several shop owners approached me before leaving. Margaret, I want you to know that Robert is no longer welcome in my establishment, said Thomas Brady, who owned Brady's Fine Furniture. And I'll be spreading the word. Same here, added Patricia Chen, who ran a high-end estate sale business. What he did to you, he could do to any of us. The community needs to know. By the time I left the restaurant that night, I knew word would spread. Charleston is a small city in many ways, especially in the tight-knit antique and historical preservation community. By morning, everyone would know, Robert and Linda's reputations would be in ruins, and I felt no guilt whatsoever. The divorce proceedings took 6 months, but they were worth the wait. Robert tried to fight, of course. He hired an expensive lawyer who argued that Robert had contributed to the business's success, that he deserved half of everything, that I was being vindictive and unreasonable. But Jonathan Pierce was better. He presented the evidence methodically, piece by piece. The forged documents, The embezzlement records, the affair documentation, the testimony from Marcus Webb about the surveillance, the expert analysis of the forged signature. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s who'd built her own law practice from nothing, was not impressed with Robert's arguments. "Mr. Holloway," she said during the final hearing, looking at him over her reading glasses, "you forged your wife's signature, embezzled over $80,000 from her business, and conducted an extramarital affair with her best friend while planning to steal her property. And now you have the audacity to come into my courtroom and ask for half of what she built? I don't think so." The final judgment was everything I'd hoped for. I got the house, the business, full ownership of the building with no claim from Robert whatsoever, and Robert's retirement account as partial restitution for the money he'd stolen. Robert was ordered to pay me alimony for 5 years, a delicious irony that I savored every month when the check arrived. He was also ordered to pay my legal fees, which totaled over $45,000. The judge stopped short of pressing criminal charges, but made it clear that if Robert ever tried anything similar again, prosecution would be swift and severe. Linda's reputation was completely destroyed. The Historical Society asked her to resign from the board. The Garden Club dropped her membership. Her friends, our friends, abandoned her one by one as the full extent of her betrayal became known. She eventually sold her beautiful colonial and moved to Florida, unable to face the daily humiliation of running into people who knew what she'd done. Michael moved back to Charleston with Sarah and the kids, just as he'd promised. Together, we transformed Holloway Antiques. Michael brought new ideas, modern marketing strategies, and a social media presence that attracted younger customers. We expanded our online sales, opened a second location in Savannah, and started hosting monthly historical education events that became incredibly popular. The business thrived in ways I'd never imagined. 2 years after the divorce was finalized, I was standing in my shop on a beautiful spring morning, rearranging a display of Victorian jewelry, when a woman walked in. She was in her mid-50s, elegant and professional-looking with a warm smile. "Are you Margaret Holloway?" she asked. "I am," I said, setting down the necklace I'd been examining. "I'm so glad. I've been wanting to meet you for months. My name is Catherine Ross, and I'm a senior editor for Southern Living magazine. We're doing a feature on successful women entrepreneurs in the South, women who have overcome adversity and built thriving businesses. Your story came up in our research multiple times. Would you be interested in being interviewed for the article?" I thought about it for a moment, about how far I'd come, about the betrayal I'd survived, about the business I'd not only saved but strengthened. "Yes," I said, "I'd be very interested." The article came out 4 months later. The headline read, "How Margaret Holloway Fought Back, One Woman's Battle to Save Her Legacy and Reclaim Her Life." It told the whole story, the affair, the embezzlement, the forgery, the public exposure, the legal battle, and how I'd emerged victorious. The magazine didn't shy away from the difficult details. They presented it as a cautionary tale about trust and betrayal, but also as an inspiring story about resilience and the power of standing up for yourself. The article reached millions of readers across the South. Suddenly, I was getting interview requests from local news outlets, invitations to speak at women's business conferences, and messages from women all over the country who'd gone through similar betrayals. One woman wrote, "My husband and my sister did the same thing to me. I thought I was alone. Your story gave me the courage to fight back." Another said, "I'm a lawyer now, but when I was younger, my business partner tried to steal my company. I let him because I was too scared to fight. Your story makes me wish I'd been braver." I started a blog called Betrayed But Not Broken, where I shared advice for women dealing with cheating spouses, business fraud, and family betrayal. Within a year, it had over 100,000 followers and had become a resource center with links to lawyers, therapists, and support groups. I turned my worst experience into something that helped others. And that gave me a sense of purpose I'd never had before. 3 years after the divorce, on a crisp autumn evening, I was having dinner with Michael, Sarah, and my grandchildren at our favorite Italian restaurant when I saw him. Robert was there with a woman, not Linda, someone new. She looked younger, maybe in her late 40s, blonde and expensively dressed. They were sitting in a corner booth, and when Robert saw me, he visibly tensed. The woman noticed his reaction and turned to look at me. She smiled politely, clearly not knowing who I was. Michael noticed too. "Mom, we can leave if you want." "No," I said, taking a sip of my wine. "I'm not going anywhere. I have just as much right to be here as he does. A few minutes later, Robert got up, presumably to use the restroom, and had to walk past our table. He paused, clearly debating whether to say something. Margaret, he finally said, his voice awkward. You look well. Thank you, Robert, I replied politely but coolly. I am well. I heard about your expansion, the Savannah location. Congratulations. Thank you. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. Michael was glaring at his father with undisguised contempt. Sarah had put a protective hand on my arm. I really am sorry, Robert said quietly. For everything, for what I did, for what I put you through, you didn't deserve any of it. I looked at this man I'd once loved, this man who'd shared my life for 35 years, this man who'd betrayed me so completely, and I felt nothing, no anger, no sadness, no lingering affection, just a mild annoyance that he was interrupting my dinner with my family. I appreciate you saying that, Robert, I said, but apologies don't undo actions. They don't return stolen money or restore trust, they're just words. I know, he said, looking down at his shoes. I just wanted you to know that I regret it, all of it. Noted, I said, turning back to my pasta. Enjoy your dinner? He stood there for another moment, clearly hoping for more forgiveness, absolution, something to ease his guilt. But I had nothing to give him. He'd made his choices. Now he had to live with them. He walked away, back to his new girlfriend, who would probably discover in time what kind of man he really was. Michael leaned over. Mom, I'm so proud of you, the way you handled that with such grace and strength. Your grandmother used to say, I told him, that the best revenge is living well. And you know what? She was absolutely right. 5 years after that terrible October night when I found the receipt, I'm 63 years old and living my best life. Holloway Antiques now has 3 locations, Charleston, Savannah, and most recently, Asheville. Michael runs the Charleston flagship store. I've hired excellent managers for the other 2 locations, people I trust completely after learning my lesson about blind trust. I still go into the Charleston shop most days, but more because I love it than because I have to. I've trained myself to let go, to delegate, to trust the right people while maintaining healthy boundaries. My book, The Perfume That Changed Everything, How I Fought Back and Rebuilt My Life, was published last year by a major publishing house. It spent 6 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. All the royalties go to a foundation I established that provides legal aid to women dealing with spousal fraud and business theft. I've been invited to speak at conferences from New York to Los Angeles, sharing my story and encouraging other women to stand up for themselves, to trust their instincts, to refuse to be victims. Last month, I was featured on a national morning show. The host asked me, "Do you ever regret how you handled it? Do you wish you'd been less public about the betrayal?" "Not for a second," I replied. The shame belongs to the people who did wrong, not to the person who was wronged. I refuse to carry their shame for them, and I encourage every woman watching to do the same. The response was overwhelming. My inbox was flooded with messages from women thanking me for speaking out, for showing them that it's okay to be angry, okay to fight back, okay to demand justice. Robert reached out a few more times over the years, awkward emails, occasional texts, always apologizing, always wanting something. Forgiveness, reconciliation, a chance to explain himself better. I deleted every message without responding. Some bridges once burned should stay burned. Linda sent me a long letter 2 years ago from somewhere in Florida. Pages and pages of explanations, justifications, apologies, and requests for forgiveness. She said she'd been in therapy, had done a lot of work on herself, had come to understand how much she'd hurt me. I read the entire letter once. Then I burned it in the fireplace and never thought about it again. I don't need their apologies, I don't need closure from them. I found closure on my own by building a life that's richer, fuller, and more authentic than anything I had before. Emma and Jake, now 9 and 7, love spending time at the shop. Emma has already declared she wants to be an antique lady like Grandma when she grows up. Jake prefers the historical aspect, asking endless questions about where each piece came from and who owned it before. Watching them learn and grow in the business I saved gives me a satisfaction that's worth more than any revenge could ever be. Sarah often tells me, "You're my hero, Margaret." When Emma and Jake are older, I'm going to tell them the full story of what you did. How you stood up for yourself when everyone expected you to be quiet and accept it. How you fought back and won. Just teach them, I always say, that they're worth fighting for, that no one has the right to steal from them, not their money, not their work, not their dignity, and that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. Last week, I got an email from a woman in Ohio named Jennifer. She wrote, "Dear Mrs. Holloway, I just finished reading your book and I can't stop crying. My husband of 20 years has been cheating on me with my younger sister for the past 8 months. They've also been pressuring me to sell my inherited property so they can invest the money. I've been too scared to do anything about it, too worried about what people would think, too afraid of being alone. Your story gave me courage. Tomorrow, I'm calling a divorce lawyer and a private investigator. Thank you for showing me that I don't have to accept betrayal. Thank you for proving that women like me can fight back and win. Thank you for your voice." I wrote back immediately, "Dear Jennifer, you absolutely can fight back. You absolutely will win. I promise you that on the other side of this pain is a life you can't even imagine right now, a life of freedom, authenticity, and self-respect. Document everything. Trust your instincts. Build your team of professionals. And remember, you are not the villain in this story, you are the survivor. Stay strong, you've got this." Because that's what I've learned in these 5 years since my world fell apart and I built it back up stronger than before. We're all so much stronger than we think. We can survive betrayals we never imagined. We can rebuild from ruins. We can take the worst thing that ever happened to us and transform it into our greatest triumph. Robert and Linda tried to destroy me. They tried to steal my business, my reputation, my life's work. Instead, they freed me. They freed me from a marriage that was built on lies. They freed me from a friendship that was never genuine. They freed me from the need to be liked by everyone, to keep the peace at all costs, to value harmony over honesty. And in that freedom, I found myself. The real Margaret Holloway, not the accommodating wife, not the trusting friend, but the fierce businesswoman, the survivor, the fighter who refused to go down without making them pay for every lie. I'm 63 years old. I run a successful, growing business. I have a son who respects me, grandchildren who adore me, and friends who value me for who I really am. I have peace. I have purpose. I have pride in what I've accomplished. And I have absolutely no regrets about how I got here. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect. This is Auntie Rose reminding you, never let anyone steal your worth. You're stronger than you know. Betrayal reveals character, both theirs and yours. Choose to let it reveal your strength. Until next time, darlings.